Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Audit Tuesday. So this UTest podcast is going to focus on the governance around AI development as well as deployment. So to help explain the digital landscape, we're lucky to have Rob Yates and Ted Alben of GetSmart Cyber Defense here today to share their insights. Good morning, Rob and Ted.
Good morning.
So first of all, Rob, can you please introduce yourself to the Audit Tuesday audience and specifically what your firm, GetSmart Cyber Defense, does for cyber strategy?
Would love to. Thank you, Ashley and Garrett, for inviting us. Ted and I are equal partners and co-founders at GetSmart Cyber Defense. I have a broad business and technology background. My areas of expertise are improving business outcomes through transformation, strategy execution, risk management, leadership development, and organizational effectiveness. Ted is our CTO with expertise in cyber and physical security, solution development, and IoT. Ted is also a fractional CIO and CISO, and he has successfully run his own IT service firm for over 16 years. At GetSmart, we apply lessons learned from years of technical and business consulting, and our aha moment was when we realized that no amounts of technology can fix cybersecurity. It's a people problem. And to drive lasting solutions, leadership and the workforce require alignment and a shared culture that embraces a cyber defense.
Ted, do you have anything to add to that about your role at GetSmart Cyber Defense?
Sure. As the technical lead, it's really my responsibility to connect people with both sides of the dynamic of cyber defense. That's the technical and the non-technical. For example, having the best perimeter protection rapidly becomes irrelevant when the password is kept on a Post-it note stuck on the side of the reception desk monitor. And after years of authoring policies and managing the security tech, the most profound palm to the forehead moment for me are in security have more to do with identity than anything else.
Perfect. So let's shift gears here a little bit. So there's a lot of concerns about the role that AI plays in access policies and procedures. So Rob, opening Pandora's box, can you give us some high-level reasons this is less than optimal, as well as some AI algorithms that can affect user decisions?
Well, yeah, the Pandora's box, that's great. So AI can introduce errors if the algorithms are not properly trained or if they rely on biased data. These inaccuracies can lead to incorrect access decisions, potentially granting unauthorized user access or restricting legitimate users, thus compromising security and operational efficiency.
So Rob, expanding on that, so what challenges can the complexity of AI introduce to user access reviews?
Well, implementing AI in user access reviews can add complexity to the process, and AI systems themselves can be targets for cyber attacks. If an AI system used for access reviews is compromised, it can be manipulated to alter access permissions, creating significant security vulnerabilities and exposing an organization to potential breaches. Ted, you have some examples, I believe.
Sure. Well, I would say just, while I'm in the position to add some color to things, I just want to dispel any thoughts that the rumor that CrowdStrike's latest software code is named Pandora's box. I just think that that's a nasty thing. It should, okay. Let's back to work. So from a security and risk perspective, AI absolutely can make errors if the algorithms aren't properly trained or if they rely on biased or incomplete data sets. And this is going to inevitably lead to incorrect access decisions and potentially give unauthorized access and permissions to the wrong users or restricting the legitimate users from their role, their designated roles. And the thing that none of us like to get are the false positives and or false negatives, right? And AI is really going to be doing a good job at flagging legitimate access requests as unauthorized. But sometimes it just, based upon, it only knows what it knows. Remember that expression, you don't know what you don't know until you don't know it. Just assume that AI doesn't really know. And it is therefore bound to lead to operational disruption and I would say security breaches.
And Garrett, so there are important industry guidelines released on this topic, right?
Absolutely. The most important, well, the most cited right now is from our friends NIST, the National Institute of Technology and Standards, NIST. And did I say that wrong? Standards and Technologies, right. And they came out with a guidelines on AI. It's a pretty heavy duty document. In fact, I'm going to just kind of give an overview of that. There's something in Zoom that allows you to share a screen, I've heard. There you go. Can you see that, Ashley?
Yes.
Yeah, so let's go into what NIST AI risk management framework talks about, okay? The first one is govern. And I'm going to defend the concept of govern right here. I mean, our friend Ted, who's always got good humor and good perspective and does great posts, so make sure you do a LinkedIn on him. Govern is not about what people think, hey, I just got to get it through to compliance. It's supposed to be the process of quantifying the risk for the enterprise and then creating a plan of attack to address those risks. So that's what the govern function, not only in the AI RMF, the risk management framework, but I'm going to talk a little about the cybersecurity framework as well from this. For example, let's say hypothetically, you had an agent and it went on, everyone's machine is including the airlines, right? And if that agent was affecting the kernel, you might want to make sure and QA the hell out of that before it affected the kernel. That's a hypothetical, right, Ted? That's what I'm saying.
I don't know how hypothetical it is. I always say do a major release on a Friday that you haven't tested. That's the way I roll, because I like to live on the edge.
Live on the edge. But here, in serious, govern. And so now we take that, which we all can understand, and now put it to something maybe we don't understand. About
hang on. Governance really, Garrett, governance really sets the tone for risk management, right?
Nice. Yes.
And
so that's
yeah, go ahead.
Go for it.
Well, when you're talking about this balancing act, you got to look at the technical aspects of AI design and the development of organizational practices and competencies, for the organization. So it's really a critical thing to have that overarching concept of what a framework does, how your organization aligns with that framework, and how governance is really the first expression of that. Make sense?
Yeah, no, and that's what I'm saying. There's 4 functions in the NIST AI RMF, right? The first one is govern, and it says, as Ted just says, it says, hold it, let's step back first and make sure the institution has a concept of what we're doing. And there's a culture of reporting and communication. I just took the CGIT certification. It's the most important thing about governance is creating a common dialogue, a vernacular that the company can talk to the different sections. So that's what the govern. Then it goes into map. Map, it says, okay, now that we have a concept of how we're going to work together, what are we trying to do? What the hell is the purpose of this AI? And that should be documented, okay? And if we can state what it's going to do, the next thing is we should be able to measure. We should be able to quantify. What are the metrics? There's some real important webinar I was doing this summer on the concept of this. Metrics. That's what the more enterprises want, okay? And lastly, once you complete the project, don't just, wash your hands and say, done, rock and roll, I did it, I'm going to go to Bali. No, manage means, okay, you set out what it was supposed to do, watch what it does, and see if it's actually executing on it. Here's a really cool slide that was created by, this is where it starts getting into identity, that was created by this wonderful NIST researcher named Riva Schwartz, got this off of YouTube. She did a real informative, walked through the entire AI RMF. And one of her slides said, basically, hold it. these are the sections you should be concerned with. And what I got of this, and we all see the elephant from the way we see it, right? It's like, look at this. You're talking people, application, task, the model. Who are the users involved in this? Can you quantify in your enterprise? Can you quantify who did what? And that's what if you go through and you can just ping us on LinkedIn or whatever, but we came up with we took the AI RMF and we did control after control and said which ones are detailed around identity. This was a good lead into that says, hey, this is what matters. Okay, before I get off the topic of NIST and the AI RMF, there is many mappings to the granddaddy of all their guidances, the NIST CSF 2.0. Okay? NIST CSF always finds its way into the other bodies of work of NIST, where it says the practices of a good cyber practice include these domains. Okay? And they have 6 domains here. Well, of course, govern is here. But watch what's really relevant to the ARMF and also to the CSF is the concept that we all fail in, or we're constantly failing on the principle of least privilege. It's called PRAA05 and in this CSF, okay? And it basically says, hey, let's make sure that who we have given access to should have access, and no more, no less. And that is grabbed and mapped into the AI RMF and the other documents around AI. Whereas if we're collecting data, who's involved in the collection? If we're storing data, who's involved in the storage? If we're manipulating data for the AI algorithms, who was involved? And we'll get into it in this call, but why does that matter? I mean, look up, data poisoning. Data poisoning is, hey, right? And Ted's, got it, right? Is that, I created this data because the beauty and the magic of AI the data comes in and then it'll guide my algorithm accordingly. Well, if someone populates the data with garbage, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? And if you can't quantify who was involved in the collection, who was involved in the storage, and who was involved in the manipulation, how can you defend your AI? All right.
So I want to interject real quick here. When in my conversations with Rob about these types of systems and rules like RBAC, right, and understanding that all of these things from the RMF they're not an ending, they're a beginning, and they're part of this cycle that requires continuous improvement. Rob uses the word Kaizen. And since I don't really, I only know boutique Japanese business language. And when he says Kaizen, I say Gesundheit, but that's the extent of my German. So, again, people really don't understand that this framework is a guideline and a continuous roadmap that always has to evolve, just like you have to go back and make sure that you're continually auditing your permissions and making sure that these systems that you put in place and these policies are evolving continuously and are real-time documents. Wouldn't you agree with that, Garrett? And UAttest does that.
Yeah, exactly. The concept is the governance is probably one of the most unique domains in the cyber where it's doesn't say, like, I built 2FA and we see that in your PCI and all that, you should have 2FA and then quantify. Governance doesn't say that. Governance says you should have practices and procedures that mandate that the enterprise has these practices to not only anticipate, but to respond and react in a professional way when things happen.
Thumbs up. Hey.
There you go.
So, Rob, what impact do you think this NIST document will have on the AI world?
Great question. And thank you, Ted, for remembering continuous improvement, which is one of them. But nice. The AI document provides guidelines for best practices in managing risks associated with AI systems. But the scope is quite broad. So it's everything from safety to security, trustworthiness, and societal impacts. That's pretty heavy. Societal impacts. So overall, the NIST document is expected to contribute to the responsible and ethical advancement of AI. Again, pretty heavy. From a global perspective, it identifies AI roles as people and planet. These are organizations that must work together to manage the risk and achieve the goals of trustworthy and responsible AI. So if that didn't scare you away and you're brave enough to read through the publication, which is really brave if you can get through the whole thing because there's a lot of good information in it, but you'll find something I think is really critical, and that's the stated goal of fostering a risk culture. So this is encouraging. We know this because it happens to be our superpower. Going back to what we've been focused on for years is to eliminate risk and regain control of your business, building a robust cyber defense culture.
And Ted, in the security world, will the NIST AI RMF recommendations and guidance on specified controls, specifically access controls, be noted by your profession?
Some are receptive and some are not. I'm in the receptive camp, fully. When an organization puts itself out there, creates definitions, there's always going to be an element where you have room for disagreement and improvement. But for the most part, NIST AI RMF is controls that are basics, such as access management. Just start from there. You don't have to look at the entire lexicon of the controls to be able to give yourself a toehold and a starting point. And ultimately, NIST is really designed to help organizations manage risks, and in this case, associated with AI systems. And it does provide this really good high-level guidance for implementing effective security measures.
And Garrett, so what do you see specifically in the guidances around identity and identity controls?
Yeah, and here, let me leave off where we left off. I love this purple color. So they get to show it again. The principle of least privilege, right? That's where we said. Let's get back to AI and this, Revis, okay? So what I did is quantify this. What should we be doing? Good AI governance covers who collected the data, and I did this. I was at a large organization, Silence, and we built 9 AI models with real private data, how you type, how you see, how you move your mouse, all that kind of stuff. So I had to quantify who collected the data, who handled the data, who was involved in storing the data, who was involved when the data went to the AI group in their creation, and then who disposed of data after the AI algorithms were created. All these are going to be quantified, have to be quantified. And all these actually, in the case, at least where I was working in large organizations, these were a different set of humans and different set of teams. And for each model was different. And if it does sound daunting, it's because I think it is going to get more and more daunting. And Rob, you and Ted, I throw it to you guys, but I see stuff like, when this comes out with a 76-page document, and then EU came out with another document around it, these guys aren't kidding around. This is the NIST is great, guys. I presented them once. They do, high-level documents. I'm sure this Riva person's wonderful. The team's wonderful. But then what happens is the regulatory people get it and say, oh, I can turn this in, and just as a webinar, so I can say this, into something that I can sue businesses on, right? That, hey, this AI we already talked about it, did data poisoning or did something like this and came up with the roots. What was your practices and procedures around creating it? And I think that what this webinar is about is helping you guys understand what this is about, and let's get in front of this before it's too late.
If I may, just a friendly reminder here, and it's sometimes by some, it's misunderstood. NIST is not a regulatory body.
Thanks for pointing that out, Ted.
Full stop, right?
Yeah.
It just gives you, it's like years ago, we had a Thomas guide. Now we've got, Google Maps or whatever, or Apple Maps, right? It doesn't mean you're going to drive on every road. It means that you're supposed to be able to identify the major thoroughfares, the major rules, the major boundaries, and it's up to you to make sure that you work within those suggestions, right? You're not supposed to drive off road. It's the same way when you're running cybersecurity in your organization when you're trying to meet certain standards. They give you a standard. They tell you this is what you should do. It's best standards in practice, but it's still up to your organization to make sure that you have fully articulated how the controls apply to your organization. Not by saying, hey, it's sign off. Hey, we're compliant. We followed the NIST rules. We can give you these examples. But that doesn't mean you're free and clear, which is, again, I think there's a lot. I don't mean to be a commercial for you, Attest, but I guess I am. Because what I like is the structure and the discipline that you're going to get by making sure that it's more than just being able to check the boxes. It's understanding that your organization really is to a level of maturity with policies and procedures that you can actually stand up to an audit, stand up to scrutiny, and make sure that the statements, that your declarations are true. And that's critical. Not just their rules.
Are you saying, Ted, that companies should have evidence that they actually practice those proper functions in governance?
Look, maybe we do need to get out of the parking lot on a Friday afternoon and like, hey, Rob, what do you think about, you think we're good? Because unfortunately, that's the standards that a lot of organizations operate with these days.
Yeah, and can you spell class action lawsuit?
Guys, if it sounds like we're worried, we think that this is going to all become legal, because I completely believe it's going to become very legal. I completely believe, because I don't know why, and this is just a side rant. I don't know why some people fear technology or are angry at technology, but there's no way in hell you can say that they're not. I just feel when I hear certain people talk about AI, it's like, oh, those evil software companies are creating this stuff that's going to take away decision process, when no one is more pro AI than myself or the people who develop AI. We just know it's just another tool to help, but we got to be adults about this. There will be lawsuits. There will be, like you said, class action suits against enterprises come up with AI. And if we don't have the evidence and the documentation of how we created it and why we believed in the outcome of the algorithms. How can you justify the outcome of this algorithm? Well, this is what we did. These were the practices and procedures that we put about it. It was documented in reference, of course, to the NIST AI RMF, and this is why we believe in what we created. I think that's the way we have to be looking at this.
If you want to talk about the ultimate in irony, we're aware of some law firms that are actually using AI to predict the outcome of certain cases based upon evidence. I mean, that is in and of itself the definition of irony. And one of the cases that I'm aware of actually has to do with the ethical use of AI within an organization. So let's use AI to determine whether or not that case is actually winnable. But if you're a lawyer, it's okay. I love lawyers, but remember, there are some things rats won't do.
Well, one of our co-founders is a lawyer. Thank you, Ted.
So, Rob, how does one get started on all this governance on an AI project?
Yeah, they're great. Not with a lawyer. Let's not start there. But, I think starting with an assessment is really prudent, because that's the best way for an organization to pragmatically discover their gaps and prioritize them, because that's really the most important part. NIST is such a big document. We talked about that. We talked about some of the risks. We have all these people involved. So let's find out where we're at. Build a detailed document, an audit trail that serves as evidence of a completed process.
So, Ted, let's go technical for a second. So can you tell us why transparency and accountability is important in the process?
AI algorithms often operate as like a black box, right? And it's pretty much impossible for end users to really understand or how the decisions are being made. So you can't follow breadcrumbs that aren't there. Now, the system does provide clear and transparent audit trails. So forensically, after the fact, you can go back to ensure that every decision and action is documented and traceable. And that's crucial for compliance and accountability. But, Dorothy and the Lion and the Tin Man didn't see the wizard behind the curtain at the beginning of the movie, right? So again, there's a lot of stuff that's just happening in the dark, and that's critical information that we need to make decisions.
So, Ted, going back to security, do you believe there are any security benefits of using, for example, UAttest over AI-driven systems?
Yeah, well, absolutely. First of all, AI is a target, and systems that can become targets for cyber attacks, it's just unprecedented that they have been designed with security in mind. And, you start out with security, has been top of mind. It's going to be the first target. And AI is an insertion point that causes a lot of vulnerability. UAttest is designed with integrated security. In other words, it's not an afterthought. It wasn't applied later on. It's integral. It's in the DNA. So it immediately out of the box is always going to be part of reducing risk of unauthorized access and manipulation.
If I may, it's simply by relying on proven human-led processes, right? I mean, organizations can do better, mitigate risk associated with access management.
So, yeah. Rob, go ahead, Garrett, sorry.
Because this is all related. Because let's pull AI from where people are thinking it's this big nebulous, back down to the realm of just IT, right? The way I look at the way this is going to play out is no different than the way our friends, who I brought up on the CSF, around the SolarWinds, and they were accused of not doing SDLC, software development lifecycle, not doing 2FA, and not doing principal least privilege. That was it. It was like real brass tacks, hey, these are what the standards are of best execution should be. And that was around software development that was delivered to, critical infrastructure. Well, what about, software development around basically who gets a loan? Software development around who gets the heart transplant, software development about, how tight the angle of the turn off the 405 should be, right? That's what this is all going, guys, is that we've got to we got to have evidence that we considered the risk and had governance and practices around those. Okay, yes.
So, Rob, can you provide an example of AI causing false positives or negatives in access permissions?
Yeah, sure. Actually, Amazon Web Services comes to mind. They faced an issue with its AI-driven access management system, IAM. And Ted, I believe you're a consultant to AWS. Can you give us some color around that?
Sure. The good old days, Garrett, right? When they didn't even know what to ask. So back in 2020, there's this homegrown solution at Amazon that we were working with, AI-driven identity and access management system. And it was supposed to do all of those looks great on paper stuff, like reduce complexity, streamline operation, free up resources to focus on the important things. But out of the gate, we realized we were dealing with bad data. And the AI system flagged legitimate access requests as unauthorized. And the engineers and everyone else, we had to run around and found that we were locked out of critical systems ourselves. And it took about a year. And IT fought to get it under control. And service disruptions went through the roof. And, you never got a really good reason why there was an outage. I was working with some tier 3 backup systems at the time called Glacier. And if you thought Glacier was slow during the Ice Age, you can only imagine what the impact was during these outages. So, ultimately, everything had to be tossed out the window after a lot of money and a lot of time was burned, all because of the frequent inaccuracies in the AI systems.
Yeah, and Glacier aptly named And net, when the dust settles, Ted, complete erosion of trust, right? AWS acknowledges the need, in the end, that you need to have people involved and have human oversight.
Yep.
So, Rob, GetSmart previously posted about how AI-driven identity access management systems led to a major security breach at Capital One, right?
Yeah, that goes back a few years. Around 2019, I believe, a major breach as hackers exploited vulnerabilities in their AI-driven identity access management system.
Yeah, and it just seems like it was just like yesterday, right? I mean, I remember at the time it was a AI attacker manipulated access to sensitive data for 100 million customers, and those are big numbers, right? But not until last week when we had 109 million hacked at AT&T, and whether or not it was AI related, credential stuffing, or once again, a chance to blame Snowflake, it's beside the point. One of the most painful and first reminders that we have to understand is AI's potential to undermine basic security policy. And you just got to know who's calling the shots, what's it based on. And it kind of makes me think about, again, the human touch and identity trust scores. And it's one of the few things that we can really count on in this industry are identity trust scores. And once again, over to you, Garrett. You attest identity trust scores ringing any bells?
Yeah. Let me take that. That's great. No, this is where, and I liked what you're doing, Robin and Ted. And we're saying, hey, we all love AI. Everyone on this side and then the other side of the mic loves AI. Let's just use it intelligently and put some guardrails on it. And when I say guardrails, because identity trust score, we got a lot of trust scores, and everyone's throwing trust scores at us in a good way, because metrics will help us become better IT people and better IT systems. But let's not forget the manual processes that are keeping our IT systems intelligent and secure. And that's what we did at UATest. We said, hold it, we can use AI. We can build a model on what a suspicious user should be. And there's a lot of good models out there. So, a lot of the actions, hey, this guy usually dials in from Los Angeles. He's authenticating from Harbin, China today. No, that's an authentication. I'm talking an authorization. When we authorize a user, we can use the UATest model, which we built and have already pushed out, and it's in GA, that says, well, I don't know how much you should trust this user because his permissions are all over the map. Not only his permissions are all over the map, he's got segregation of duty violations all over the map. And then we did something which shows that we take the concept of governance of AI seriously. What we did is we put not only in the automated score, but we put the score in the score, when's the last time anyone's reviewed this user? As Rob and Ted just said, the concept of the manual process. Did someone review this user in the last 3 months, 6 months, 90 days, right? And if no one's ever reviewed this user, which you're supposed to be doing according to all the NIST and the regulations, then we give that trust score a low one. So I believe that the way we built an identity trust score is the best of both worlds. It's respecting the intelligence and the rapidity of intelligence and the real time of intelligence we can get from AI. And then what it's doing is also inputting and weighing the human factor into the trust score. So yes, that's what we built.
So we're almost out of time. So Rob, can you cover some key lessons learned from integrating AI into access management?
Yeah, happy to. And accountability, Garrett, just from what you said, is the word that's just jumping off the page with me, because these are the lessons that we've learned, is that you need to get to that point, and you need to know who it is that's accountable. Having high quality information and accurate data is really important to get AI to work well. You need to educate the users about the AI systems and why they're important, makes everything run smoother. So it's also essential to keep an eye on these systems and update them regularly to handle new threats. We didn't really talk about the adversary and how they're changing their tune on a very rapid basis. So while automation's great, we still need the human oversight to make the best decisions. Addressing ethical issues like bias and staying compliant with regulations is pretty crucial. We've seen clear metrics and KPIs are important to track AI's impact on IAM, and especially involving the stakeholders. At GetSmart, we've been using an adaptive strategy platform to manage and mitigate risks associated with AI and IAM. It's the easiest way to make continuous improvements based on real-time feedback and changing conditions. And I realize that's a lot. I had to pick a few that really, if I had to pick one that would really stick out, is that human oversight is always required. Ted?
I've never met a robot I didn't like. So we've got to accept AI is just going to be part of the process, whether your organizations or vendors or partners or providers are embracing it, and they're all going to be using it differently. But AI systems have to be secured, and they have to be aware of securing themselves against potential threats. And the only way that you can do that is continually revisit through regular security audits, vulnerability assessments, and above all, it really comes down to robust access controls.
So, Garrett, how does UATest help in these security audits?
Yeah, and the key word here is automation. There's every organization we work with, and Ashley talks to all of our customers as our customer success director. They all have good intentions. They all say, hey, I'm working with credit card data, so I'm under PCI DSS. I have to review my users. I'm in healthcare. I'm under HIPAA High Trust. I have to review my users. But usually they start it with a really, really painful, out-of-date manual way. This is what we've perfected at UATest and done 3.5 million of these. Okay. And which screen am I showing, Ashley?
The how UATest works.
Look at that. The blind squirrel finds a nut. So there you go. So here's the customer, right? This is you guys out there. And, you got someone who's, accused of doing the job of risk of security. Okay. This is what we do. We partner with GetSmart Cyber Defense, and they become, helping you here as a GRC practitioner. They use UATest, and they figure out which ones, first what they do is figure out which ones regulations are relevant to you, which controls you have gaps in, and then they can take your identities and be with our connectors and our mechanisms, we imbibe the identities. Remember, identities aren't, when you start really talking identities, not just the ID, the email address, and an authentication mechanism. No, it's the metadata that matters. Who they have access to, who their manager are, who reports to them, what roles do they have, what permissions do they have, etc. That's what we're imbibing here, and that's what the regulations and the guidances are saying. Taking that metadata and then review it. And don't have that reviewed by the poor, AD admin, because he doesn't know. He knows how to set up two-factor. He knows how to create a group. He doesn't know whether Bob should have access to the Salesforce and Jane should have access to the pharmaceutical app. He doesn't know that. That's written in that that NIST doc that I said, that what it spells out is that you should be pushing those type of access reviews out to the right people. And that's what we've automated in the tool, and that's what we trained our friends over at GetSmart to do, so they can use this. And then what happens? It creates a report. Yeah, the stuff goes back into it can go right back into the IAMs and remove those users, but just as relevantly, and sometimes even more relevantly, it creates the evidence that your company needs. Yes, your security person needs that to go clean up the identities. The compliance manager needs to follow that to show that, hey, we did this for X. We did this for PCI DSS. We did this for HIPAA. We did this for the NCUA. We did this for, you're in energy, NERC SIP, whatever it is. And it goes to the internal and external auditors. And we're very proud to say that we're always working with the internal auditors, but our reports have been reviewed by all the major external auditors who say this not only is copacetic, but this is exactly. Then they go bother you something on your two-factor for your gates or something like that, but they leave you alone on your access controls. Various.
So, Rob, how does GetSmart Cyber Defense streamline this process?
Well, we partner with UAttest, and I think, Garrett, you just did a great job showing that pictorially. And calling on an external expert to get an organization prepared through the policies and procedures is really key, so that when you're ready, you'll pass the audit.
So great stuff. So Rob, why don't you tell the audience about the special offer you have put together for the listeners? And we can also put that on the LinkedIn chat right now.
Excellent. So the NIST AI risk management framework outlines people and planet, which identifies the AI actor roles and gathers their perspectives, and adds external actors too. So there's a lot of accountability at stake here. The stated goal is fostering a risk-free culture. So that's, I think, just a hard thing to do. It's phenomenal. It's a great goal. So an assessment would be a recommendation as a first step. And we're offering this group on the call here now our consulting services and use of our IAM assessment tool, which is based on NIST CSF, for a limited time of 90 days and is offered at a 50% discount. Ted?
Thanks, Rob. So just in terms of the mechanics, it's a fast-paced, collaborative, hour-long session. And what we're going to do in advance is send you a few non-technical questions for each of the categories, and we're going to give you a score. And that score is going to reflect a maturity level for your organization's identity access management practices. It easily identifies strengths and areas for improvement. Eliminating risk and regaining control of the business and building a robust cyber defense culture is essentially our superpower. And we're happy that we can use some of the great tools from UAttest in achieving these goals on behalf of our clients.
Perfect. Rob, can you tell the audience how they can get in touch with you?
Give us a shout at Rob or Ted at GetSmartCyberDefense.com.
Perfect. And then we at UAttest can be reached at uattest.com, or of course just write us at info@uattest.com. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, guys. Happy day.
You're welcome.
So it's a pleasure being here. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye-bye.